Can't see the flag.
I
Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for being here this morning for the County Board Study Session. Public comments. Nicole, did you have some things that you wanted to go over for the board?
I
She
did.
had talked to me earlier this weekend, and I suggested that she just come talk to the full board rather than just me.
Yep, I contacted Jeff last Thursday
All right, Thursday.
to see kind of the directive that the board wanted us to take with this, or what directive the board wanted to take. I feel like it's a pretty significant safety concern, and I wanted everyone to be aware of it. But as I was telling Jeff on Thursday, I had received a call at the end of the week prior, and then on Thursday morning as well, from two separate patients. Both of them, the one from the week earlier, they actually, I have some stuff in writing from them. But their concern is they're being told when they're being discharged from the hospital to call the hospital direct if they need an ambulance in the future. The concern came from the first family because they do have family that works at Horizon Health, so they kind of felt like they were stuck. And when the staff member told them that, they thought it was one of the staff members that work for ECSSA because the uniforms are so similar. And they questioned them as to why they would do that. They were told that they'd have an ambulance faster, and that is how they should, what the method that they should use to get an ambulance. On Thursday, I had talked to a patient that we had transported the night before. This patient had asked the crew that I call them the next morning, so I did. And the patient just wanted to give me a compliment on the service that they had. While I talked to them, I'd already pulled up all their records, thinking that something had happened, or something was wrong, pulled up the dispatch information, and noticed that this patient, who we've transported multiple times, had requested Horizon Health when they called 911. So I had the patient on the phone, and I asked them, is everything okay? Has there been an issue with, care, an issue with the staff? What's going on? I noticed that you requested Horizon Health when you called. The patient's response was, well, that's exactly what they told me to do the last time I was in the hospital. The patient's caregiver had also contacted me that day as well, just to relay the compliment. Didn't realize that I had already talked to the patient that morning as well. So I feel that it's a somewhat significant concern because I view it as circumventing the 911 system that we have. That we have trained emergency medical dispatchers in our dispatch office who are trained to give instructions in case of emergency, to stay, to talk to a caller on the phone, so on and so forth. There's been a lot of confusion. We've talked to facilities in town, we've talked to Brookstone, we've had the manager from the high-rise call because the flyers that were put out and the magnets that were put on the wall have the ambulance with the phone number to call them direct, and they don't say call 911. It just has the hospital number. And their concern was, who are we getting? Is this the manager at the high-rise called because she wanted to know if that was the new procedure for getting an ambulance. Were they not to call 911 anymore? So I just feel like it's a somewhat significant safety concern in my eyes. I wanted the board to be aware. I asked Jeff last week for directive on how you wanted to address this. If he wanted me to reach out to administration at the hospital, what he wanted to do. And he wanted me to come to the meeting this morning to address the entire board in their entirety for suggestions on this.
Dan?
Not the, when you call the hospital and like I want to talk to my primary care doctor, it will give you options all the way through. I think the last option they give you is to call the emergency number, which they give you is the Horizon Health ambulance instead of the 911. They'll say call 4911, which to me is being a little, it's trying to direct you to one ambulance service when it does that. Isn't that true?
Well, I think, 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 I
No, when you call the switchboard and it tells you exactly if you're having a medical emergency, you need to call 911.
I thought it said 499. Okay, I could be mistaken.
And we have the right to direct people. We are a private entity. We can advertise our service. It is legal. It's gone all the way up through the state IDPH. And we have the right to advertise our ambulance service. We do not tell patients when they are discharged that they have to call us. There is a flyer in their discharge packet that has our information on it. There's no scripted language that goes with that. I, in turn, have other safety concerns for patients that have called 911 and have had to wait when there have been other ambulances sitting there staffed and ready to go. So, I mean, patients have a choice. I think our state's attorney has made that directive that patients cannot call 911 and get a choice. So we as a facility, as an entity, are allowing them to have that choice. Sure, it takes the patient dialing a different number, but if they were able to call 911 and request who they wanted, then that would solve that problem.
Well, this number for the ambulance service, who answers it?
The emergency department.
Comes straight to the emergency room?
Correct.
Okay.
If I have a hospital, I guess, and I had an ambulance service. I don't wanna push my ambulance service too, I guess. I don't know, I'm just thinking as a company, I don't know. I don't think they're doing anything that any other company would do.
I'm not saying that they're doing anything illegal, because it's not illegal. I do believe it's unethical.
I don't know.
Well, and
Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry, I was gonna say, I'm not questioning the right to advertise, provide ambulance service, have a number out there. I do understand your concern, if somebody needs to call 911 rather than just an ambulance, there are advantages to it. Short of education, I don't know, I don't know what the best, there's nothing we can really do about it short of education and make sure that people do know the difference. And
Yeah, I mean, it just has
what
to
the
pass,
best way to
it
handle
needs to
that
pass
is.
the reasonable person test. And we're at a point where we're talking about ethics, we're talking about the actual verbiage of any statement, document, anything given out to the patients themselves. So, you can see both sides and you get into sort of a gray area, so it's just incumbent upon all parties to make sure we're doing the right thing by our constituents, so. And even with that, as I'm sitting here listening, is there something we would need to put in the contract to mitigate? But I think if all parties are doing what they're doing now and doing it the right way, there's no real way to, put any verbiage in a contract to prevent that. So, it's all good to know about.
Well, the only verbiage we could put in a contract would be like Mattoon and require any ambulances operating in the area to be licensed, but I'm not sure it's in the best interest of the county to squeeze out another possibility either.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I would be hesitant to do that.
It just seems like for years we've pounded in, and I don't know how to get around this, but 911, emergency, quick. And now we're faced with a situation where 911 or this or that, there could be others, and it's just desimplifying it. So,
Well, and I think if you're,
Simple, very simple.
if you're clutching your chest in your living room, you're not searching for that refrigerator magnet that has that other number on it. I mean, 911's.
I don't know what the
That
answer
might
is
be a
there,
Darwinian
Been there and done that.
question. at that
because
point.
free market, dictates.
Well, like I say, you lay there with a heart attack, the last thing I'm thinking about is, what the hell was that
Well,
number?
it's 217, right? Yeah.
911's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Well, I say, you're always gonna have some outliers there, and you wanna make sure people understand, but,
Get you out of the port.
and I, we live in a small community, and there's stories get bandied about daily, and you hear things, you're like, okay. And whether or not it's accurate, if that story is out there about response time and what's the word I'm looking for here? Service or the, hold on, let me reference the paperwork because I'm an idiot.
You're
I had
asking
my coffee.
a bunch of older
Yeah.
people to come up with
The mutual aid.
There you go.
Okay.
Just from our end, when they call, these two patients, I've given them the phone numbers, for either commercial insurer, concerns or Medicare concerns to file a complaint that way.
Sure, okay.
And what would the complaint, I'm just curious what the complaint would be. You say you've given them forms.
That's their option if they have a concern regarding the care they're receiving. I can't do, anything about it, but, and there's more to I've got an email with the rest of the details from the first one. They were going to be transferred, requested our service, were told no. It goes on, so. But my safety concern is the circumventing of the 911 system that we've enacted for public safety reasons.
What determines a building if use an ambulance? I mean, I had to go to Terre Haute, I know what my bill was, I know what I had to pay up front. And then I had a power of attorney, my patient when Lakes used the Horizon Health for a transfer to Terre Haute, and I know what the bill was on that. What determines the total billing to start with on the ambulance service? And then
Federal
how
guidelines.
much is being paid by, maybe I shouldn't ask the question, but I know what I had to pay. The rest of it was either paid by Medicare or my insurance. I know what
Doesn't
I
matter
had to
what's
pay
billed.
for my power of attorney person.
Medicare only pays a certain percentage based on the coding of your claim, whether it's emergent, it's advanced life support, basic life support, emergent, non-emergent. There's different levels
I
of
see,
care.
okay.
So they have a set amount that they pay, and then their federal requirement is that the insured pays 20% of their bill for services, like what they've allowed.
So if, for instance, if I got the bill for what I had to pay, if I didn't have the money to pay, then you'd have to write it off, is that correct?
Your 20% copay,
Mm-hmm.
you're not allowed to write that off.
You try to debtor's
I'm
prison.
saying, if I got my bill, which I know what it was, and I paid it, but if I didn't have the money to pay that amount of money,
Then we have.
what happens to the
Then
rest
we have
of it?
certain procedures for financial aid that you have to go to for hardship that are outlined by the federal government.
So eventually you get the money one way or the other.
No. No,
That's what I'm saying, that's what I was asking you.
no, there's no guarantee to that.
Okay.
Yours was coded COB, can't tank your soul bastard. is what they-
I did pay
Yours
for
was
it.
extra.
What good did leave you on the side of the road somewhere?
On the first patient you were talking about, they said at the hospital, you'd already transported them there, they were a patient, and the next day they wanted you to come back to transfer them.
They were still in the emergency room.
Oh,
The physician had told them they would probably need transfer to another facility. And there must have been someone from EMS working in there because they thought it was one of our staff, and they asked if a particular staff member was working that night to do the transfer. And that's when the staff told them that they weren't associated with us, but that the hospital does their own transfers. And they said, if we're transferred, we would like ECSSA to come, and the young lady told them that they only use their hospital ambulance for transfers. They ended up not being transferred, they ended up being discharged home.
So,
And would that be a separate piece, a transfer?
Yeah.
Right.
so it wasn't like a 911 situation, really?
Their concern was when they were discharged, the young lady from EMS that was in there told them if they needed an ambulance, that they needed to call the hospital direct, and gave them the phone number. And the patient and the patient's daughter that were in there said, well, why would we do that? And the response was, well, why wouldn't you do that? You'll get an ambulance faster by calling us.
What time of the day was this, roughly? I mean,
It was during daytime hours.
okay. When there would have been 3 ambulances, you would have had 3 ambulances available,
It was in the afternoon. I
possibly, depending on if you were out on calls.
believe. Sometime late afternoon, I think,
Okay.
3 to 6 around there. If I remember correct. I just put the date down on mine.
And what was the second situation? Again,
When the
second
patient,
patient.
patient called 911, requested Horizon Help. And when he had asked.
How recently was this?
This was on the 6th.
Just this last week?
Yeah, and so patient had requested, told the staff when they dropped him off, have the boss lady call me tomorrow morning. So when I got in the next morning, it's a patient that, I mean, we all live in a small town, I've known him forever. So when I called, patient just wanted to give a compliment on the care that night that they had had. And so I asked, you know, was there an issue? I noticed on your dispatch records, when you called, you requested Horizon Health, has there been an issue with the staff or the care in the past, you know, something that's prompted this? And he said, no, that's just what they told me to do when I left the ER the last time.
To dial 911 and ask for our ambulance.
My only thought is to me, you know, there's a couple issues that we don't know the answer to, and the legalities I don't know. But a lot of it's education. You know, if there's two possibilities. And I keep looking at Gary on that. I mean, you know, I don't know how you educate the public. You're in a better position than we are, but
Educate them to what?
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
well, if people,
911 for emergencies.
well, yeah, but if you want a Horizon ambulance to transport you,
Then
you shouldn't call, you call them, not 911.
Right, yeah.
And to know the difference between
And
the
if
two.
you call 911, you're gonna get the
Yeah,
Paris ambulance.
and
not the
I
hospital
would guess that
ambulance.
a good chunk of the population doesn't, you know, they see the ambulances going up and down the street, parked, whatever. They don't know what the difference is.
But my understanding, John, is that if I call 911 and would like the hospital ambulance, they will then give me the number.
That is correct. That is
Correct.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's,
Per what the state's attorney advised.
right,
Right.
as far as our, what do they call them, the procedures.
I just don't want it to be confusing for our public, because something bad is going to happen if we do that. We have a lot of older people in this community. Yeah, the confusion is high,
Mhm.
and the last thing I want is, you know, for something bad to happen because of that, or because of a delay. And we have EMDs and dispatch, you know, for a reason.
Right.
If you're choking, you know, they tell you what to do. They need to start CPR, they tell you what to do. You need to check her pulse, they tell you what to do until EMS arrives. They stay on the phone. That's the point of having this service. It's the reason that the county went to 911 and then pushed for the dispatchers to become EMD for that reason.
I think maybe the biggest takeaway is, you know, it would probably be in Horizon's best interest to make sure that whatever the party line is the party line. You don't have a random employee just giving their thoughts that can lead to friction.
I think if you look at our website and our advertising page, it says if you're experiencing a medical emergency, you can call 911 or you can call us. On all of our advertising, it does dual numbers. And if we're going to talk about delays and we're going to talk about safety concerning patients, I would encourage all of you to FOIA request last night's call at around 2040 when ECSSA was dispatched on a shortness of breath call, and the patient was eventually brought to Horizon Health as basic life support when she was experiencing a heart attack, a full-on STEMI. She was intubated, so we put her on a ventilator and took over breathing for her. At the same time, there was another call that went out in the community for 911 that they were unable to meet the demands of, and they dispatched fire to go to that scene. So there's issues with delay. There's true safety concerns. There's issues in that. Now, I'm not going to sit here and mudsling. I'm going to tell you that of the 96 emergent calls that we have received via our 911 line, none of them have been heart attacks, strokes, significant life-threatening injuries. They have been, I've fallen, I need lift assistance to get up, my mother has fallen and slid out of her chair, those types of things.
In the second call last night when they were transporting the first patient to the ER, and they were about 2 minutes out from the ER when the call came in, was a patient that had fallen that needed lift assist.
All right,
Well, that, just this last conversation is something that we talked about at our last ambulance meeting. Talked about the staffing, according to the contract, it says, I don't have the original contract, is this the same language as in?
no, the stuff in green and yellow is changed.
That's the contract.
Anything not highlighted is original.
This is.
Well, this is a bid spec, not a contract.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
the contract.
And here's something.
I do
there.
have a copy.
You looking for the bid spec, Carl?
No.
Or the
Contract says
agreement?
lift assist is available.
I've got one right here.
Ambulance is fully staffed 24/7, correct?
That during the terms of the contract, the Paris ambulance agrees to staff 2 ambulances full-time at the paramedic level, which we all agree that this was done 10 years ago and it needs changed. But in talking, I wasn't aware actually how many ambulances were staffed, and I found, during the meeting last week that 24/7, we have from 7 in the morning till 7 in the evening, there's 2 staffed, or 2 people at the ambulance bay, 4 people with 2 ambulances staffed, but then after 7, there's just 1 that's staffed, and then they have another crew that's on call.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah,
That's-
and
then Monday through Friday, we have from 8 to 5, we have the 3rd ambulance staff as well. And the second call, the second crew from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. is on call. Most of them stay there because they all live greater than 10 minutes away from the station. There are 2 of them that live within 10 minutes. But that is based on historical call volume runs. When you go
Right.
back and you run numbers of the amount of calls that come in between those hours, that's how we base our staffing.
right. But in the conversation, and I know there's been instances where their first, after 7 p.m., their ambulance is out on call, and then they get a second call. And then, people, if they're not already there, some cases they are, but in other cases they're not, and they have 10 minutes to get there. Well, that's a delay, and my concern is that we've got Paris Fire that's available, Paris, or hospital ambulance that could be called. To me, that needs to be addressed, and I'd like to hear from the board. Do you feel like that we need to have someone, 2 crews on 24/7 available, not on call, they have 10 minutes to get there, they're there?
I think
What's the contract say?
Derek is gonna lead a conversation about that directly. Is that
Okay.
correct?
The contract just says
Available.
staffed. What's staffed mean?
And I will tell you this, that when D. Bergen owned the ambulance service, he came to the county advisory board, and the staffing level was changed to the one truck was there 24 hours a day,
Right.
and the second truck was on call 24 hours a day. Because they worked a 24-hour shift with 1 crew there all the time, and the other crew was on call 24 hours a day. And the advisory board brought it to the county board at that time, and that's when Monty was on here and all them, and they made the change to that. We made the change to where there's a truck 24 hours a day, and the other truck was there 12 hours a day and not on call. Because you had one there 24 hours a day,
Right.
and the other truck had 10 minutes to respond. We realized that we were busier during the 7A to 7P, so we changed it from what the county had been doing prior for years from that other schedule to there would be more trucks available in a moment's notice.
I know you brought that up at the meeting the other day, but that was just a verbal agreement.
No, they brought it, that was when Roger, Dale English was on the advisory board. Trogdon was the county board member on it. Roger Falk, Mike, used to work at the license branch.
Cassidy.
Mike Cassidy, and all them brought it to the county board, and that's when, like I said, Monty was on here, Ben, Jen.
So did they do a formal agreement?
Yeah, they made a formal agreement on that.
Can you see if you, I mean, when you got all that stuff for me the other day, you didn't come across that, did you?
Well, I wasn't specifically looking for
Okay,
that
could you
necessarily,
see
but
if-
I
What year was
can.
that?
That was before we took over in '09 is when they made the change.
Well, and the most recent contract has it, reads out staff 2 ambulances, paramedical, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we need to figure out what it is we actually want and make sure that that contract reflects that.
Right.
And is,
Yeah, Jeff has a good point,
And
that,
that's what we're
that's on our agenda for later in the day to hammer that one out.
Okay, all right. But I just wanted to bring that, because I think that needs to be addressed.
And at what level? Is it paramedic or is it
It'll always be paramedic.
ALS or
I mean, on our end, it will always be
paramedic?
paramedic, because that's always staff.
So Eric, when would that have approximately have been? Where you,
It was gonna be probably, D
ballpark.
changed it right, not long after he took over in '03. It's gonna be '04, '05 era
Just in-
is
Okay,
where I would look.
thank you.
And I'll dig through the stuff that D gave me, cause he had a copy of it.
All right.
And it might even be in a county board, like, you really wanna know those minutes, where they changed it and approved it at a county board meeting in the minutes.
I'll
I
look.
might still have it too,
Yeah, Dale, you might see if Dale English has it, he's,
if you can't find it, because I think he kept a lot of the file on a lot of his.
But it was a mutual agreement that was signed by all parties.
yes.
Okay.
Well, I say, it's interesting that that would have been before
Our
this
contract,
contract or the one.
Yeah,
our
so
contract
it's-
was an exact mirror of the one from '03. Nothing was written and
So
changed.
it was basically the county board that screwed that up. A new contract should reflect a verbal agreement.
Right.
So,
So do you wanna, since we're talking about it, do you wanna go ahead and
yeah.
hit up where we're at as far as your committee and,
Yeah, and I have
what
some
you need
questions
from
for
us.
the group as far as, way forward and what we need to do, and that can include public as well. Carl and John and I and the 2 ambulance services have met twice in open meetings, and John and I met here last week and just tried to hammer out some stuff as far as what we want. So we used the bid spec from the last bidding period that didn't actually go through based on a timeline, and started there. So in front of you, you got a colorful page there that's got just some changes. In general, the yellow highlights are just clerical changes, just to try to get that kind of up to speed. By no means are we necessarily going to use this piece. I just thought it was a good product to jump off from. Green is changes that were made or things we may want to strike based on thoughts of the board. And then some addendums there at the end. So just kind of walk through it. And I guess just as an overarching question that we had is, you read through this bid spec and some of the things are, hey, tell us about your service, tell us about your qualifications and what makes you a good candidate for these bids, right? And some of it is contractual obligations that you can expect in the contract. And so what our question is, do we, A, need to have basically the final product of a contract that goes out with the bid? And B, if so, that the information held inside the contract should basically illuminate our position on any of those requirements, right? And so we're just asking for additional qualifications. Does that make sense? I could have probably said that better, but
I think I understand. How about you guys?
somebody else? So, just as an example, so on one, it says qualifications, right? So that would be a contractual line item, right? You shall have 4 ALS ambulances, or whatever that number is, one paramedic assist to the ALS level 24/7, additional, 7 to 7, Monday through Friday, right? That will be in the contract, right?
They have to have four.
Separate
Both
piece,
have four.
we'll address that later.
Okay.
Well, and in the
So-
contract as well as have an order to bid.
Well, right,
Or-
because
yeah.
what that becomes is, there may be an operation that can, outside of you guys who already have stuff in place, we want as many bidders as possible, and so, as long as they have the finances to back and can get ambulances ready, that leads back to our timeline, wanting to have this out as soon as possible, and have basically a 2-month window between when we award the contract and when the contract goes into effect, right? So in order to cast as broad a net as possible, we are asking for various qualifications as far as financial stability. Those things don't necessarily have to be in place. I'm not asking a bidder to have all the license sheets for all of their ambulances that would require at the time of the contract going into force, right? So there's the separation. So,
Why?
well, so let's say that, company X wants to apply for this, can get up to speed in the requisite amount of time. They're not gonna put forth the capital for 2, 3, 4 new ambulances without
Immediately.
knowing for sure they're gonna win the contract, right?
And so they're not required within that, once it's awarded to the time it goes.
June
in.
1, you're gonna have 4 ambulances.
Okay, I
Right.
misunderstood what you said, okay. I'm with you, I didn't understand that.
Because I think on the last time we had the proposal, it says in order to bid, you had to have this in place, you had to have, because I remember specifically, they were saying like Christmas Ambulance didn't have a place here and there, so they couldn't
Right,
couldn't bid.
there
That's-
was no segue to it, yeah.
Right, yeah.
My question is, how did you determine 4
That's my point.
ALS versus?
That was what was on there.
That
And
was
so
what was
certainly
on.
that, any of this is negotiable. This is what we looked at, and so I changed.
I see, I didn't know what the.
That yellow highlight is verbiage change to ALS vice paramedic.
The ALS is just more current terminology
We wanted to be
than
clear.
what the old contract had it. I think they said paramedic level.
Well,
So,
paramedic is an up-to-date deal, right?
What's a paramedic assist vehicle? Is that like a van or something like that?
it's like a car with a bag with a paramedic in it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
Like
And-
a chase car.
I thought
A
we
whole
were
bunch of bags.
required.
Actually, the verbiage, you can't, if you use ALS, you could get an ILS unit, because in Medicare's terms, in the state of Illinois, you have 4 levels. You have EMR, EMT basic, ILS, and paramedic. ILS and paramedic are both ALS according to Medicare. They both are ALS services.
How should I write this?
If you want a paramedic ambulance,
You need to put
you need a paramedic, because otherwise you're gonna get, I mean,
Okay.
because technically by Medicare and Medicaid statutes, an intermediate service like Chrisman, when they have an intermediate up there, they are an ALS service.
Got it.
What's ALS stand for?
Advanced life support.
I knew that one.
So I mean, if you want paramedic, you need to specify
Okay.
paramedic, because
Okay.
otherwise you could get intermediates.
Sure, okay, well, I say, we were just trying to keep that update, so paramedic, ambulance, got it, okay. So, let me just circle back around to level set. So, any questions about what we're trying to figure out of how we're actually gonna put out this for bid? Is it going to require a contract that is at the, all but the name of the service in it? Can we get away with just telling them our basic requirements? I realize that probably the optimum would have the contract in it, so everybody knows what they're going to get. Whether or not we can produce that within a time frame that is reasonable, I don't know. So, I mean, certainly if we're using this very thin contract, I'm sure we can probably gin that up pretty quick. If we're going to try to improve it substantially, then we're basically waiting on our lawyer to do so. So, these are all things that are running through my head, and this is,
If we're gonna include a template for the agreement in the bid package, it seems to be, or versus developing it afterwards. That's, either way, it's gonna take time, and an ambulance service, say it's XYZ and not even these two. They may wanna wait to even gear up till they know what their contract, they could still turn us down and say, We're not doing that.
Well, so I guess that's a good point. So the alternative would be, you know, the expectation from us would be that contract is ready to go on the bid date, right? Also, one caveat to that would be, we basically say, if you're going to apply for this, you know, put a bid in for this proposal, you shall provide X, Y, Z. Also, you shall expect that the contract will include the following requirements and lay those out.
And an exhibit, and here it is. Or, oh, okay.
Just saying a separate piece
Oh,
that
okay.
looks basically like this bid spec, but doesn't have all the verbiage of the contract, but our goal would be, once this goes out, we can't have any nice to haves or big surprises in there as far as what they're gonna be required to have. Now, whether or not that's legal,
I
a
don't
big
know.
question for Mark.
Right.
But
See, I'd
that,
like to see a contract not include an automatic renewal
Right.
anymore. Okay?
sure,
It's,
that's how we got to this
Yeah.
situation in the first place, and so.
I think that as long as we've got a 5-year contract, that shouldn't be an issue on a return, but that they should expect, especially since we're bidding this, that we'd be bidding it every 5 years. Okay?
That's how we got in trouble last time.
That's just my thoughts, guys.
Yeah.
Yes. So, do you either, anyone that wasn't sitting in the room with us, do you have any insight on that? Is that just best a question for Mark? Can we put out a bid spec that has those two pieces and that's sufficient? Do we absolutely have to have a contract attached to it? What does that look like? If there's question marks, then we'll just go to the state's attorney.
Well, I think for our benefit going forward, yes, we have to ask the state's attorney. But I say we need to hammer out the bid spec and then turn around and as soon as we can, start hammering out that contract in hopes of getting a template of it out with the bid spec.
I would think if you hammered out the bid specs,
You're pretty close.
You're
that
pretty
you're
close
pretty
to the
close.
contract, right?
And we don't want an 80-page contract.
No.
No,
I mean, if they have to have certain requirements that are state and federal mandated, that, we don't need to put that boilerplate back in, right?
and if you go on through the bid spec, it's very similar to what the contract would be.
Right.
I mean,
And I
you're
think,
gonna have to put a little bit more legalese probably in it, just to make Mark happy, but,
well, but I think
He's gonna
here's,
make a decision anyway.
well, I know, but,
here's our bid specs, here's the old contract. Can you make these reflect?
yeah,
Does that,
yeah.
guess?
You put a couple things on the email on contract, one was from Coles County, correct? That one was tied in with the fire protection district, right? So they get their money through that district, and they actually had to pay about $8,000 to the county for the 911 service, according to what it said on the contract.
Okay.
So they had to pay. Like the one that you put in that was from Paris, there was something toward the end that said,
It's just included.
tax money wanted for those 5 years. You remember that?
Right.
Okay,
That's the
and this is not gonna have that then, is
It
that
will.
correct?
It will.
Okay, yeah, well, or we're
That's
not.
how they're gonna bid it, right? That is
Okay, okay,
straight
I just
up
want-
how it will be bid.
Okay, that's, I just noticed the difference between
Sure,
two.
yeah, so as far as that goes, you can expect it very much like that. I didn't include that page because it,
Well, I could say, yeah, it didn't belong there is my point. I mean, when you bid something, you should bid it not on, based on the tax money you're gonna get, based on what you want to run the service, is that correct?
so.
With
They're
including
one
tax
and the
money
same.
if you put it in your bid,
Right,
right? Okay.
well, the only thing to bid on, as far as these companies competing, would be, here's how much we require from the special service area by year,
Right, and then
1 through 5.
And then what, if they get the contract, then the people in those 7 districts will have to pay a certain amount to support the ambulance. And we don't want to say you have to pay 15 cents on the dollar or 20 cents on
That's
the
set.
dollar. Okay.
That's
The
set, so
maximum
the
is
max
set.
is set.
Right. Okay, that's the reason why I was wondering why it didn't have the,
Yeah, I just left it out.
And then we are going to get into all kinds of
I know that.
challenges when that amount changes, because
right.
we assess on a percentage basis, whereas a bid's going to have to be on a dollar basis.
Right,
And then you get into the tax year versus our
That sounds like a
contract.
Don and Jeff problem.
Yes,
Not
it's
mine.
not a
Yeah.
big one.
Right.
That's not an issue.
Well, it's going to be a
It's big,
challenge,
yes.
but it's manageable.
No,
Yeah.
it's, yes. I
Yes.
agree.
We can do it the right way.
My thing, I guess at this point, is the qualifications.
Mhm.
I mean, how did we determine, or what do we determine the level of service we want and how extensive it is? That's the main thing, in order to deliver good service to the entire service
Why,
area.
why would you want 4 ambulances if you only have 2 crews?
Well, this,
That's my point.
This was the other one. I don't, this was the one that you did.
During the day, they have 3 crews available
Yeah, but-
currently, and
this isn't
Maybe
your
one of them doesn't
recommendation
start or
yet.
something, that-
Not necessarily, I think it's a good place to start, but I mean, certainly we can.
Yeah, no, I mean,
All of it's open to discussion.
Yeah,
oh, no, I understand.
I mean,
Just,
how many? 3, okay.
2 currently, 1 on order.
That's what, okay.
and,
So I mean, that's an important piece to anchor on, because that is something that, you know,
We all
that's a
have
shall in the contract, June one,
Shall have 4.
yeah.
or
Well,
whatever
my
that
thing is,
number
why
is.
do you
whatever
need
that
4
number
if you only ever have 2 crews that are staffed?
Well,
they have 3 crews staffed.
That would be
If you read
required
it, Dan,
during the
it says
day.
2 24/7, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
there's additional,
Okay.
from 8 AM Monday, so there's
Right,
3,
right.
right? And then 4 would just tell you you've got 1 ready to
On
go
standby.
if 1 breaks, right?
Okay.
And that's where we get into Carl's issue about is the second ambulance at night on call satisfactory
Right.
versus having 4 people sitting in there.
Right.
Has there been a point in time you needed 4 ambulances?
Actually, we've used all 5 at one time.
Okay. All right, just
Like a
question.
mass cas or something like that, or just?
No, just crazy runs, just the way the day hit.
How are we gonna look at paramedic versus a lesser level? In other words, to me, I mean, optimally, we'd like to have every one of
Oh,
them
yeah.
have paramedic. But that's probably not practical, or is that
Cost
practical?
effective.
I think, you know, when we talk about what our obligation is, if we lay this out, is, you know, laying out all the expectations. And some of it's a little gray, some of it's pretty straightforward. In my mind, why would we have a step back in level of service?
That's
So,
kinda where I'm at.
so paramedic ambulance is what we currently have, that's what we're gonna ask for, right? And so, you know, the piece in my mind that we need to decide on is, you know, again, all of this is open for discussion, but, you know, do we actually require 24/7 staff, right? So the way it is now has been the way it has been for years, right? But we need to decide, you know, do we want the 24/7? And if so, that needs to be laid out in ironclad, right? So,
and the exact verbiage, what you mean by 24/7?
yeah, absolutely. So, and, you know,
It's a little fuzzy right now, obviously, isn't it?
I think the way it's set up now is, you know, this contract, you guys aren't doing that, I would say, right? But I'm not saying that's bad, I'm just saying that's the way it is,
Right.
right? And so, maybe, that's all we need, right? And we would lay it out in such a way. We wanna have what's in here, we don't, you know, all we can do when we're asking for bids is ask for the financials and find out about the business itself. We don't want anything to be left to interpretation to a company that bids the lowest bid, you know, by 50% and has all the financials lined up, right?
Now,
So-
say that again, then.
We have some latitude as far as this body to say, you know what, we don't know anything about these guys, we're not gonna accept their bid.
Okay.
But this is a, you know, full public view, we are having a bid, so it is on us, it's our responsibility to lay out all the requirements.
Right.
And that is not only sufficient, requirements in the qualification, in the bid they're gonna send in, meaning, hey, you know, this is a $5 million company with these many assets, we're able to move in today, we've got, you know, option to buy on this property X, you know, whatever it is, right? That's one piece. The other piece would be in the contract, saying, we don't know what you've done in your other municipalities, here's what we require, you know, and these are, you know.
A,
and-
B, C, D, E, we're requiring that, and that will be in the
Right.
contract.
So June 1, come ready to play.
Right.
So that's what we need to lay out. And so, you know, all these are pieces of that. And so if we, you know, if it makes sense, if we need to improve our service as it exists, we wanna have in the contract 2 ambulances, 24/7, no questions asked, right?
You're
Or
saying
maybe
you don't
it's,
wanna go back. So
right,
whatever,
we wanna maintain our current level of service
Right.
and moving forward. So, you know, maybe that is, we want to improve, to increase the service by requiring 2 ambulances 24/7, right? So, you know, that's something that we
Paramedic
need to.
even, whether we wanna say they're paramedic or not.
Yeah, I mean, and in this case, that's what the current standard is, right?
Isn't there a legal obligation though, to what you need to staff an ambulance with?
Yes, it depends. The BLS ambulance has to have 2 EMT basics on it, unless you get a waiver from the IDPH that says you can run a first responder driver and an EMT. For a paramedic ambulance, you must have a paramedic and an EMT on that ambulance. And the license have to be, the license stay with that ambulance. So if that ambulance is licensed as a paramedic, it has to have a paramedic on it when it rolls out the building.
Okay.
If it does not, it cannot leave the building.
That's correct, that's correct.
So, and if you would jump on a Crispin ambulance that has a first responder and an EMTB, it's still a paramedic ambulance with.
Once I
you're
get on
with
there,
your
yes.
stuff. Yeah.
Because it's not lesser.
No, they have a waiver, I believe they have a waiver.
Yeah, they do have a waiver.
So but if they call for an intercept, whoever intercepts with them, then it steps up to that level when we get on board with our equipment.
Got it.
You said that you, and not to cut it short, you guys are gonna continue to develop this. You said you had questions of the board. What are those
Right.
questions
Yeah,
that will help
thanks.
you do your committee's job?
All right.
Hey, Derek, as a 911 board member, you need to put in the contract that 911 will dispatch the ambulance. That has been brought up at a couple of our 911 board meetings and study sessions, that there is no verbiage in there, even though it's understood that it's been done that way for the last 20 years, that the 911, E911 will dispatch the ambulance service, but there's nothing that actually says it in the contract that says that they have to dispatch the ambulance. Although with E911, they have to answer the phone and tell the ambulance, but there's nothing written in that contract. Like in the Vermilion County contract, how we talked about that it says
Right.
they will dispatch, and that was one of the things that Troy brought up one of the study sessions, that there's nothing that says on 911 side, there's nothing that says we will dispatch the ambulances. So you may
I mean,
want to include
is-
that in there.
Sure.
I mean, it's kind of understood, but.
Right, and
That's
so
what
they're
they
trying to
did in
mitigate.
the contract.
Right, but in the contract,
Is there, what do you,
What would be the alternative to that? I guess I'm trying to.
well,
figure-
from the 911 side, you all were at a meeting, some of you all were at a meeting with 911 about that they were looking at doing 911 separate out of the sheriff's department and other things. But when they've gone back and looked, they've said that there's nothing that says, when Troy's gone back and looked, there's nothing that says that the ambulances are required to be dispatched by the sheriff's department 911.
Wouldn't that be an agreement with 911 and the board rather than the ambulance service?
I don't know, I'm just saying,
Well,
they would clear it up.
sure.
we do
Well,
have in the bid spec under dispatch that the county will provide 24-hour per day, 7-day a week dispatch through its C911 center.
Okay.
At no cost. Any and all backup units owned by the contractor must have direct radio communications capability with the Edgar County E911
That should cover
center.
it. I haven't seen that, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah,
something
we've
that
got
Troy's
an extra
brought up,
copy
that
of
there
that.
was nothing that clarified that.
Okay.
Because he was like, well, then why don't we just charge the ambulance services to dispatch them? I'm like, Troy,
You need that
if
right
people
now.
are calling 911, you can't charge the ambulance, because the ambulance, I mean, we have an agreement in place for
Right.
that, but
Yeah,
it just will clean it up.
okay.
You could have it.
Yeah, good to know. All right, so just to run through this, John, just cut me off if I'm saying something wrong or something different than you understood. So, so one of the pieces was, and then this is back to you, I'll try to break them out. So, qualifications, so service provider in the state of Illinois, I don't know if there's any potential bidders that are not in the state of Illinois. Is that something we want to require in the bid? I mean, obviously, we don't want them to, a tow truck operation to come and do ambulance service, but do we need to specify Illinois?
Because we had one out there Hope last time.
Right. I mean,
I think.
I know they're different, but I mean, I don't know if there's any, gotchas as far as, if somebody out of Terre Haute wants to bid. Again, my goal is to cast as broad as possible to see, get as many bidders as we can to see what's out there.
They wouldn't be set up anyway, I wouldn't think, in that period of time.
Well, we have a licensed paramedic ambulance service provider in the state of Illinois for at least 1 year.
Would it
And,
agree?
if there's somebody that's
That's
been
what
established.
Came out of the bid specs from when you all did it 5 years ago.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what we're modifying.
Right.
And we had bidders from Indiana,
Right.
who I assume, since they're right along the border, would have had a license in Illinois, because, I mean, as long as they're licensed
Yeah,
in
some do, some
Illinois.
don't.
Do some don't. so.
Transcare was the service bid.
Yeah,
Carrying
I think they're
ambulance.
no longer
Yeah,
in business.
Carrying ambulance bid, and they're out of business.
right,
Right.
that's what I understood.
So we can strike that, right? We're basically the consensus.
In the state of Illinois, strike it.
All right. So, I mean, just as of right now, does anyone have any major grievances with the 4 paramedic ambulances and 1 paramedic assist vehicle?
Does that
As a-
mean that they
as
would
a-
have 5 ambulances then?
No.
Okay,
The paramedic assist vehicle is a vehicle, it's not a
Non-transport.
transport,
It's like Jeremy's truck and Chris.
SUV or something.
okay.
like a
Or
Prius.
Eric's.
Or my Durango.
Durango.
Why are we going to 4 ALS and not
Paramedic.
or to paramedic and to a minimum of 2 paramedic and 2 minimum of ALS?
Paramedic and ALS are the same. An ALS ambulance, again, smart people correct me if I'm wrong, basically has equipment beyond what a basic level service ambulance would have, right? So the
Right,
innovation
but
stuff. and-
Chrisman is considered ALS. It's not
Because of-
paramedic, because they're intermediates.
Right.
So-
Verbiage. A paramedic ambulance has equipment beyond what a lower level.
It has,
ambulance would
it
have.
has more medications and more equipment than what an ILS or a BLS ambulance has.
So if we did the 4 ALS, we could wind up with less
You can
than.
wind it with less than, not paramedic.
I've already got that changed.
Yeah,
I'm
we're-
sorry.
we're-
Yeah,
I'm
paramedic.
sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
Sorry.
That
Okay,
was Derek and I being confused on
We were trying to be
terminology.
cool.
well, and I'm not either,
Acronyms.
that's why
Yeah.
I'm asking.
I like acronyms. you
No,
know,
that's fine.
So.
That's cool,
uh,
so we're
paramedic.
cool on that. All right.
Yeah,
So you want-
Numbers,
you
my
are
question is
starting-
numbers.
The 4, I'm just
Well,
curious.
no, but
Okay, you got 4, but you require, I understand you want backup. That's why you're saying 4, but you're saying you want 4, but we only require 2, so
maybe 3 actually, right? Because you have
2 and.
8 a.m. to Monday through Saturday. Well, that's a typo.
Okay,
But so at max or at max staffing, you're at 3 ambulances.
right,
Right. So there would be an additional extra ambulance in there.
So there's gonna be 4, of which 3 are being staffed in every week in one shape or form.
Yes.
yes,
Correct.
and 2 at all times. For
And,
this.
but a service could come in and have 6.
Right.
I mean, but the minimum is what you're
Right.
talking, okay.
Right.
All right.
But I don't want June 1 roll around and company X shows up with 2 ambulances. I want 4, right? Or we want whatever number it is we want. If it's 12, I don't care. But like we need to decide what that number is.
can you lease ambulances? Okay, so you just said have, doesn't matter, not own, but have.
well, and
They
we
could
were,
lease,
Lease, I
own,
mean,
Yeah,
just.
you can't really
yeah.
dictate that they're gonna
Yeah.
have to own their ambulances, I mean.
Right.
they're
Yeah.
gonna do it what works best for their financial.
They have to be they all have to be licensed and regulated through IDPH anyway, so.
It can't look like Ghostbusters.
well, and what Derek and I talked about, and you guys are the example, you know, you don't have 4 ambulances now. We want to make sure that you could up and going for bid spec purposes.
Within 2 months.
Yeah, you know, you could contract, you know, you could put $50 down, or, you know, do more than that. But, you know, you can have an arrangement to buy 2 if the contract goes through. And for us, we're satisfied with that. It keeps you from having to buy the extra 2 ambulances ahead of time, you know, because we're assuming nobody's sitting around with 4 extra ambulances in their back pocket.
That's my only concern about 4 is, you know, some company that is completely viable says, oh, you know, if I get this contract, we gotta have 4 more ambulances. You know, if they're an ambulance service that comes.
All of this
They
is
can
we're
prove they can
walking a
get there.
tightrope, right?
Yeah.
We wanna have same or similar level of service, and we wanna have, you know, as many bidders as we can have.
Okay.
So, and that's kind of where I went from, and this was all in the original bid spec. I didn't change that piece.
The only thing I would add to that is that you require those ambulances to be in this county. Because say
Oh.
you get someone like Arrow that they've got tons of ambulances.
Right, that's right.
So they're all licensed at the paramedic level, but you may not have those all in this county.
Or
at this-
transcare.
I'm with
Or
you.
It says that will be
We only need
located in
three
the
in this
special service.
county at one point, at one
Well,
time.
however you're gonna require it, but I would make sure that whatever you're gonna require that they,
Right there.
It's worded in here, Eric.
okay. Well,
The four will be located in the area. I mean, it's more words, but
Right.
in
And
the
say,
special
this
service
is
area
not
number
going to
one
be-
ambulance district.
Well, like I said, I haven't seen that, but I'm spitballing trying to help you all
Yeah.
too.
With you.
No, and I appreciate that.
Because Transcare could say, well, we got we had 30 ambulances.
This, just to clear it up, and again, this is not on paper anywhere, but basically we're talking about two separate pieces on a bid spec, right? One is, show me what you got, give me the paperwork, and one is on June 1, right?
Okay.
And the 4 ambulances would be an on June 1 thing. All right, anything else about 1? That took longer than I thought it would. The financial stability piece, we just kind of tried to find a number. Originally, I believe it was 150,000. I've got it somewhere.
Yeah, that was the original.
But we tried to find something that was reasonable. It wasn't overdone. Basically, just to show some financial standing, right? So 200,000 we went with basically the cost of an average cost of a decent ambulance, right? So. Yeah, I don't know, that's basically pulled out of the ether, so anybody has a better number, a better idea, I'm all ears, but, you know. I thought $1 million would be a little high, I mean, I don't know. Anybody got a
That's fine. That's
piece to add?
one.
Alright, good. So contract period was just a change, just a clerical, change. Made no changes to the service area piece. No changes to 5. 6 is basically laid out for us, with the exception of special ambulance service is listed as an additional insured. That was requested, and you guys said it was a little unusual that they did that, but there's probably a reason behind it. So again, I didn't do anything to that one. We made changes to the equipment piece. They were deletions, basically. The 7 lead, 10
12
lead,
lead,
55
8
lead,
EKG.
EKG. So that was removed. As far as that piece goes, again, I think it's probably a little superfluous. But I mean, anything on there, you guys got one? Anything you see on there that is bad should be stricken, or anything we have to have on there. As far as, again, this is a very rough product. Crickets, okay. Vehicles, the license by the Illinois Department of Public Health, again, this is a question about, Indiana ambulance services or whatever state, and goes back to the question of qualifications, vice contract. And so that was the only piece I had there. The dispatch basically just covers how that works, no changes there. Headquarters didn't change. I think that's pretty reasonable. Just out of curiosity, is 2.5 miles, is that basically all Paris proper? I don't know.
Awful darn close.
Yeah, for the most part.
And then the mutual aid piece at the bottom, which certainly seems germane to our conversations today, but just want to make sure we have that right and have it set in the correct way, right? So I just had on there whether or not we need to stipulate anybody beyond Edgar County. We preferred that all ambulance services have mutual aid agreements, and then the Mavis piece was brought up. Don't know whether that is something we need to have on there, or is
Mavis is a statewide mutual aid agreement.
And I did talk to our district representative last week, just doing some more research on that.
Mhm.
I found it interesting that he said that Mavis is getting ready to go bankrupt and possibly fold because
That sounds like
the
something.
state,
that
it's
sounds
just
right.
a
It's not
state
par for the
funded thing, and the membership dues are so low that it doesn't keep the program functioning. But he did say that there is absolutely no requirement for ambulances to participate in MABUS. It's a fire department thing. It doesn't preclude ambulances from having mutual aid agreements interdepartmentally with other fire departments or other ambulance systems. But obviously he gave me the information in the packet for applying for a MABUS certificate, but he just led off the conversation by saying he didn't know how long he would be.
He was
the
thrilled that
district
someone
rep.
called him. He'd
Yeah,
been sitting there for
because
weeks.
he said it made me going bankrupt, and I was like, oh, okay.
Well, and I mean, you know, as far as specifics, I mean, is there how has that aided you being, I mean,
Mavis?
yeah. is it-
None.
Okay.
The only thing it helps with Mavis is if there is a large scale incident, you make one call to the Red Center and say, I need this, and then they find it and send it to you.
Okay.
Our goal with this was that the ambulance service have mutual aid agreements with all the surrounding areas. We've got Northern Edgar County Ambulance in Kansas listed specifically, but Clark County ought to be on there. We just want to know that y'all are working and playing together.
Well, and that would be, yeah.
I think you could accomplish that by taking out the part that you highlighted in green there and just adding in neighboring counties or
Well, yeah, I was
in
gonna make
Neighboring
that.
districts, yeah.
Are you getting the kind of information you need? for your
Those
committee?
was taking a long time.
Well, no, it needs to, I mean, it's,
Yeah, it's good. I say a lot of this
Whatever.
stuff we just wanted to bring to the group, and so.
no, we appreciate it.
All right, so last piece we just wanted to put out there and add on. These are 4 requirements straight from, as best as my sad little fingers could type, with the Vermilion County contract.
And these are all things that are currently being done that we figured ought to be
Yep.
a
So
requirement
gonna
to
read
be
it,
done.
ambulance crews, yeah. So first one, ambulance crews is to respond to all structure fires, brush fires, vehicle fires, and hazmat incidents. Primary ambulance is to stand by crews for community events like festivals, football, basketball games when requested. Ambulance service partner with county fire departments and agencies, and on-duty crews shall attend joint training with county agencies when requested, if not on a run. And written mutual aid agreements with adjacent counties must be signed and on file with county clerk and then dispatched with contact information.
And
First
your
one,
response to these, either one of you?
that person also includes falling through porch floors.
Yes.
What kinds of floors?
Porch.
Dan's been where he shouldn't be with me.
So, anything glaring from anybody not on the ambulance committee about this? Anything we need to add or delete? or
And like you said,
think
there's
about?
another page that will include,
That is the actual bid
Right.
page.
right,
Yeah.
yes,
Um,
that's fine.
So I think the biggest thing that I have to work on, one is, can we get a question into Mark about the legality of, what we actually have to provide when we put out a request for bid? If, are we beholden to actually having a contract published? Can we just put in, a what to expect? What are we working with there?
Or the question, if he can take the current contract and the proposed bid and meld that and make it look fairly acceptable fairly quickly. I don't know what his time constraints are. I mean, if he
Yeah.
can't get to it for 4 weeks, that's an issue.
That's bad, yeah.
Right,
So.
does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I wanna know, how much latitude do I have? I may not use all of it, or we may not use all of it, but it would be nice to know what we've got.
Is there any part that we would have to talk about in executive session?
No. I
Even
can't
if the
imagine.
bids
that
come
there would
in?
be.
If you accept the bids?
That's all.
Nope, it's all gonna be,
So you want the minimum of what has to
Always,
be
I always wanna know what I absolutely have to do, and after that,
to publish and ask for?
request for bid.
yeah, should it be part of the bid package? Or can it simply say that the contract will reflect the items as listed?
So what we've done in the past, we just put in the paper, Edgar County Board is putting or accepting bids for whatever it is. Bid specs may be picked up in the county clerk's office.
Correct.
Now, we've done that many a time, and
Any of those that you can think of, sorry to interrupt, for a service or something like this. I mean, a lot of times we're basically asking, hey, build this, something that's not quite as legally challenging as a
Well,
contract for service.
For example, our auditor, when we bid that out, we put out the specs and then they in turn give us the contract.
Yeah,
So-
we don't publish those specs.
No,
They're available
no,
upon request, so
Right, and I guess
I wanna make sure we're talking about the same thing.
I'm ignorant to a lot of this, so.
The bid
you know,
specs
use
do
the
not
words
have
that
to
you
be
need.
put in, out.
we're not
Posted
talking
like
about
that.
the advertisement.
I was supposed to ask Mark what?
Sure, so,
Whether the contract has to be put out.
As part of the bid package, think of bid package.
so if we,
Yeah, I got that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I got it.
Why would you put out notice?
so if, do we have to have available to a person requesting the actual contract when we put out the advertisement for bid? Does that make
I
sense?
thought the bid package would have that in.
Eric?
Oh, were we moving on to this? I got something from 911.
Not quite yet.
Whenever
Not
you-
yet.
whenever we get to
I
it.
didn't know what the.
Yeah,
all
no,
this
no,
meant.
I didn't talk to you about 911.
I'm terrible at this.
And so all you with that would be, and if it would be easier, I can talk to Mark too and try to eliminate
It'd
what we
probably be
need.
direct would probably be better. That way you're not relaying.
That means I have to
questions.
talk to Mark, which is what I'm trying to avoid.
Easy.
Can't blame you.
Well, not if we gotta go back 3 or 4 times.
Good luck on that.
First loss is the
It's
least
just hard to get
loss.
answers from a lawyer. They,
Oh, yeah.
use lots of big words I don't
Okay, he's
understand.
probably gonna tell you if you could do the contract and include it part of the bid package.
I think it needs to be
That would
put
be
in.
preferable. I would like to see it
Yeah.
ready and
Well,
part of the bid package.
And were I
It would-
bidding on it,
I think we would
would
all
want
like to see it, but if I have to wait, or if we have to wait, a month to get him from, if I turned all of our information in tomorrow and said, hey, let's get it done, and then in about March 15th, with the product, that's no bueno.
Well, the only way to
That's why I've asked
determine
for
that is for you to go see. That way you will know.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm sorry.
I can hold your hand and walk you up the stairs if you want, Derek. I'll sit right outside his
I can
door.
hear him saying now, you give me the contract and I'll look at it and I'll say whether it's
Yeah,
great kosher or not. He's
Well, whether it's
not
legal,
gonna-
he won't put his opinion in it.
So what you need to do is take the contract and the bid specs and meld it and send it up to him for approval anyway.
Yep.
Sorry. Then it's
we
done.
we may all be sorry, but
Well, the thing I wanted to point out on Wednesday, we have talked, Derek and I, and we're gonna be authorizing, the county clerk to put out the notice of bid when it's appropriate. We'll all still have a chance to take a look at the final, but that way we don't have to come back. If he's ready, or the committee's ready in 2 weeks, we don't have to wait, okay? So,
When we bid for Vermillion County, they didn't have a contract in with the bid packet.
okay.
well,
It's good to know.
you do what,
If I had to guess, Illinois will have stupider laws, so.
I would think that it would be easier him to review both at the same time, then you're done, than to do it later. But
What I hope he will say is, if we can lay this out where it's, here's what will be required on June 1, and here's what we want in our bid packet. If that's allowable, that's what we'll proceed with, and we will endeavor to have a contract ready as close to the time of the bid going out as possible.
we trust the
That's what I mean
committee,
by the men's.
okay?
Ken, I hate to open this can of worms.
Oh,
Derek's gonna-
Just close it.
Why not?
No, I think we need to back up because we heard, some disgruntlement and it needs to be in the bid specs. Whether having one ambulance, staffed, people sitting in the shop ready to roll, and one on call is appropriate. Or do we need to have 2 staffed and ready to roll?
Yeah.
Because whoever's bidding on that, that's gonna make a difference on what it's gonna cost.
No, agreed. I think we talked about that a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, we did, but I never really, I
think
didn't
the
hear an
committee
answer
looks
if
for a
there was
solution.
one. Yeah, I was,
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've got a lot of work to do, but that's, I will see if I can get a hold of Mark and ask that question of him. So, that's all I got.
We appreciate the committee's
Yeah,
work so
if-
far.
If it, for the people that aren't on the ambulance committee, exactly what John just said, if you don't have opinion now, at least let us know
Yeah,
to which direction you wanna go, if you wanna leave it like it is, or if you want to improve and make, you know, have more ambulances available for
Well, part of the
quick
time right
response.
now, we have 2 on call, right? I mean, not on call, they're available right
From
now.
7 to 7, 7 in the morning till 7 at night.
We have 2 available, 24 hours a day.
Right, but the others are not immediately available, they're on call.
Right.
They come in.
But we do have 2, right now, 24 hours a day EMT. I'm not EMT.
Available.
Are
Or,
they available or are
No.
they staffed?
They're
From
staffed.
7 in the morning till 7 at night, there are 2 trucks with 4 people there ready to roll out the door at any given moment. At 7 o'clock at night, there are 2 people there, can be up to 4 depending on
Okay.
who's staffing.
all right,
I'm sorry.
So that second ambulance is on call at nighttime,
Okay.
which is a change from when D had it where it was just one ambulance 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
The second one was always on call.
Do we
and
want
I
to
will
improve?
say, I wanted to clarify one more point, just from talking to Derek. The ambulance is there with 2 people, they get a call, they go out, right when they go out is when the people that are on call are called and they
They
come
come
in.
in.
So when
Yeah,
they're
it's
out-
not that they
Yeah, they
wait
come
for
in.
They
another
got 10
emergency
minutes.
call.
Well, yeah, they got 10 minutes to get to the
Right.
station from that
Right.
truck being called out.
So one
But
point-
they're not waiting until another call
Call
comes
comes
in before they come
That's good
in,
to know.
which is
That's
different.
important.
That is good.
I didn't take it like.
See
that.
these fine
Well,
points.
and so also with the way the spec that I brought in has, it's 3-2, not 2-1, which is what you guys currently are at.
Right, it's different.
So it's saying 3 during from 7 to 7, and then 2 at night. So that would be an increase over what we have, and maybe that's something we need to look at too, because that's again above and beyond. So.
yeah, but this says staff, what do you interpret?
Well,
Well,
that's a separate
that's
piece,
what
right?
we're trying to
But what-
figure out,
What this
yeah.
is saying is, so if it was right now, there would be 3 ambulances ready to go, staffed, right? And so again,
I didn't-
that's where the specifics
No,
it
I didn't
says.
say that.
No, it says 2, 7 days a week, right? And then from 8, and then again, there's a typo in there, but it says an additional ambulance and 1 ambulance from Monday through Saturday. So during business hours is what
So
that
in this
says.
new bid, you're adding an additional ambulance.
That's how it's written right now. Don't know if that's what we need, right? So at a bare minimum, current level of service, right?
You don't see it
If
like
we
that?
No.
think it- that
Okay,
we need
Well,
more.
then it needs to reflect that.
Well, we
Yeah,
can sit and
that's my
talk about.
point. Staff, that doesn't say,
Right,
They're there.
you can say they're staffed when they're on call and they come in, yeah, they're, you
Right,
see what
we
I'm
need to have-
saying?
yes.
We need to be
absolutely.
precise.
very
in
much.
our
Right.
language.
You want them at the ambulance bay,
right,
So that,
available
right.
right now,
so that there's no misunderstanding later on.
right.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page, we just
Yeah.
need to get the
You guys need to
language
hammer
to-
out the language that it gets you exactly what we want.
yeah.
So,
Is what you're doing right now, does it work well with where you have it right now?
For the most part, there's an occasional,
right,
Well, yeah.
there- I mean, but there's, I mean, even if we had 10 ambulances staffed, there's gonna be an occasion where we're gonna need an 11.
Yeah.
I mean, so,
But normally, what you've got done works just fine.
for the most part.
And I don't think, I'd leave it like it was.
Well, and it's a statistical decision, you know, based on numbers. I mean, it's not like you just pull it out of the air, if this is what we're gonna do, it's based on.
That's
run
our
volumes.
normal.
Yeah.
So-
That's
I
how
know.
we are.
Well,
Yeah.
we're not educated in all these things like you
No, yeah,
two
that's
are,
why
you guys are.
And that's why we're really hammering on the mutual aid agreement.
It's just
And you
dumb
can't-
people
and
asking
here's the thing, you
questions.
can't say-
Questions.
I can't say Derek's gonna have a heart attack at 11 o'clock at night, Carl's gonna have one at 11:30.
Could this be tonight?
I'm just saying, there's,
Yeah, it's all, yeah, question mark.
Now, if Derek has a
That's
heart
why
attack
it's-
tonight,
so
you're
it's-
finishing
What
writing
you've got
this.
right now basically works fine. And you can't throw in, there are always things where you go above and beyond, that's just the way it is. So if you had 3 and you need 4,
Well, I think that's where a good mutual aid agreement comes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you get a 4-car pile up, you got everybody out there.
yeah.
I mean,
Well,
just-
and just to make this long conversation even longer, so if we decide that current level is sufficient, then we wouldn't need 4 ambulances, we would need 3. Right, that would be a reasonable requirement to have an extra
I
beyond
think that's
max
the way it ought to
staffing.
be.
So,
Yep.
I'm kind of thinking the same thing, you're asking for 4, but you really only wanna use 3 now. The 4th one is for backup, that's their problem.
That would be
You-
prudent.
It would be prudent, but our contract says you gotta have 3. So
Otherwise,
what
they
if yours
can't-
breaks down, you
Then
better
they,
get a,
then they couldn't
Well,
meet
and
the,
so
they couldn't meet the contract,
contract.
right, but we can't say you gotta have 4, but you're only gonna use 3.
right, well, that helps the can worry about response time and things like that too.
Right.
So.
But it sounds to me like the 10-minute deal, we were thinking, they called, they got 10 minutes to get there
Right,
and go,
that's what we had.
they've already got them, they're already
Once
there.
one's called out, you call the others in.
So you're
Yeah.
always maintaining those two, once you're done.
Right.
Yeah, so if you have one heart attack at 11 o'clock and then one at 11:01, sure, you wanna hope you're not the one at 11:01, but how often does that happen?
It's not at all.
Well, I do want to take a moment to clarify, because when Samantha brought up her safety concern earlier, I pulled up the patient's room report from last night to look at that, and it was not a BLS, it was ALS with a paramedic in the back. The ambulance was dispatched to 720 East Court, which is directly across the street from the hospital. They had a less than 1 minute transport time to the hospital, so there wasn't a ton of interventions done, so that they weren't delaying their time on scene to get that patient there. There was a 12 lead done, there were IV attempts done, and they transported with lights and sirens from across the street to the hospital. That second call for a lift assist, which specifically was dispatched out as a lift assist, came 13 seconds after they pulled in the ER drive with their patient. So,
Patient was brought in BLS.
it was a paramedic in the back that rendered all the treatment.
There was no 12 lead done or provided to the doctor. It was not provided to the
Okay.
doctor.
Okay.
Eric, you had something about 911?
We had our 911 board meeting last Monday. There were several members absent, so I had to run the meeting. And we tabled our contract because you weren't there, Troy wasn't there, and Dwayne wasn't there, about what we were gonna do for payment to the county.
When was this?
We had it last Monday.
That's why you weren't there. You probably didn't know about it.
Didn't know anything about it.
I don't know, Nanette dropped off my packet to me and on Thursday of the week before. But, so we tabled that because there were 3 members absent and I didn't feel comfortable and we didn't have anything really to work on because they were asking questions about our current contract with the county board, and I do not have a copy of the contract that 911 has with the county board right now. If it goes past, because the way that it was brought up that it was a year-only contract for that set amount of money, and it didn't go further out, and no one could give us, Troy wasn't there with anything, and so no one was there to give us information if we needed to make the payment based on last year's coming up, so we just tabled everything. So we won't have we have a study session coming up, March 4th at noon at the Fire Training Center. But we did not vote, to do anything with it, because we didn't have all the members there, and we didn't have some information.
So Troy wasn't there either?
No, Troy had some big thing at FedEx and couldn't be there, so I got to run the meeting, so. But Carl wasn't there, and they had some questions for you for the county board contract with them, and I didn't have answers for them, so we just tabled that till.
Yeah.
There's a vein sticking out on your forehead. What's that all about?
Sorry,
Jesus.
but I just wanna let you know that if you're expecting a payment from the 911 board, it's not gonna happen till our next meeting. More than
Just
likely.
2 months?
Yeah, we don't begin until April, our official meeting. We have a
Right.
study session on the 4th now.
We're gonna have rule.
Does that mean I'm not getting paid?
I'm just,
need shoes.
Okay.
I'm just letting you all know, because I won't be at your all's county board meeting on Wednesday. I have to teach a class all day that day. So I wanted you all to have that information now.
It's good to see you work for a living. Once.
Andy?
Keep it short.
I'm gonna try. On our cameras, the security system, we met, the sheriff and Derek and I met with the judge, with Judge Gars. and he was pretty, open to using a lot of, we broke this down in the general downtown hardware, jail, dispatch booking, courthouse security, and he was, other than airport and the health department, he said he thought this all kind of fell under the courtroom security. So, well, let's go ahead and contact Ross. Have you talked to Ross at all? What'd he say?
He, basically my ask was the buzzer, the panic button thing, he said that's all, so.
So they were
Said they're
concerned
on
that
board.
they'd like to have some sort of mobile panic button
Alert,
that they
panic button, yeah.
carried with them in case. They said, you know, you've got them up on the desk up here, but if you're not there and somebody's out unruly over here in the corner or something, you can't get to it. So he said they do make something kind of like a life alert type thing.
So are you gonna divide that up into courthouse, jail, annex, and bid it? I mean, you still got the
We've already got a bid from that one company, correct?
We basically asked for a bid and we only got one.
We only got
response.
one bid.
Well, was it a legal bid advertised in the newspaper and all
I'll ask
that?
Mark when I see him.
I mean,
That went by me.
I don't know how
By
Ross
him.
did it. Ross put it out there,
yeah,
correct?
it's
All right.
not, it's not bid.
Nothing came by me,
Okay.
so I
So
don't
I
know.
think that's something we need to do then.
Right.
Well, and that gives us an opportunity to throw in the, buttons. And
Okay.
I think everything else is pretty much, we can basically have Ross put that
Ross
back
went
out
down
like
and
that.
trimmed some things out that he thought we didn't need, that were redundant. So.
Right, or we could find somewhere else for cheaper. Buy it.
So do you want
Monitors for.
Wednesday? Decide that we want to go ahead and,
Well, we can't on Wednesday because
it's already said.
it's already set.
Okay.
So we'd have to have
Democracy
a
turns
special
slow.
meeting at the next study session to authorize the bidding of that.
Okay.
Okay, and anything else that we needed, if you happen to have the bid package ready, we could formally, you know, say something about that too if you wanted, okay?
I like your optimism.
Hey, it's all good, right?
And my understanding too, the judge said that courthouse security fund is going to,
Yeah.
the collection of it is going to go away.
Right.
Uh,
The
as a
fees that go into it are
Go into
gonna
it.
start private, they're gonna go to the state
State
police.
police.
And then will
They'll be
return.
in the hands
So
of the
in
state
other
of
words,
Illinois.
it's going to
They're
the
taking them in the DUI.
big hole in Springfield.
About 3 or 4
and
funds.
They'll give back to us what they think.
It went to legislations
So
here a while back.
Quick.
State police got wind of it. Of course, they got a little more power than everybody else. They got it all. I guess they're gonna try to fight it.
So they are, okay.
No good luck with that.
Yeah, so I mean, that's pretty much done, and then I think, what was the dollar amount for, the two pieces that they couldn't include, was it like 10?
We figured out 568 on what would go into courthouse security, and the other part was like 10, 11, a little over 11,000 for health
Between
and
the
airport.
other two?
Health and
Yes,
airport.
that's,
That's $5,000, basically split exactly 55, 45, 24 health, same amount for airport.
Did that include the second line item there, the 7,000?
This one,
Yeah, was that
Right.
in?
yes, I think it did, let's see, 6, 10, 14.
well, you figure out how you wanna
Yeah.
bid it,
Yeah.
and we'll deal with it. Anything else needed?
I met with Ori and the
Smart watch?
Smart Lot on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday morning. Walked around with them, it's Thursday morning, walked around with them, we looked at the courthouse, they had Sycamore Engineering was there, they had their engineer, and then they had a guy from the company that actually, I probably got on the email this morning, but I haven't looked at it yet this morning. Anyway, it was really interesting, they were talking about like a chiller system for the courthouse that would do away with all the window air conditioners. But it was interesting, this guy said that the technology now is such that it would, I don't know if you're familiar with chiller systems, in most places you go back to the health department, it's probably half the size of this room. And then now it's a 4x4. It's a little tall, he goes, it's a little taller, well, it's not taller than that one back there, but it was an interesting, I mean, amazing, and he said, they're really, efficient in that, he goes, a real common problem with heating, air conditioning is one side, on the east side of a building in the morning will call for air conditioning when the sun hits it, while the other side's calling for heat. And he said these heat exchangers actually take the heat from one side of the building, push it to the other, and they take the coolness from the one side of the building and push it to the one that is warm, and you're not using any energy other than just the transfer.
Right.
So
So is this a all new forced air type system?
you're gonna still have the boiler system, and that's for when it really gets cold for backup. But everything is really tied in as far as, you know, if one room's getting a little warm, it pulls more heat out of that one room, pushes it to the other room that is, so hopefully we can quit opening windows in the middle of the winter.
Sure, but so they'll have to go through quite a bit of, maybe ductless, right? Or how, is that how it's gonna work? It's gonna be basically pipe running through the
Piping is,
walls?
yes,
Like the,
in the
like
ceiling,
the,
just two
those
lines.
Mitsubishi type units?
Yeah,
the-
some, and this is, they're gonna spec it two different ways. He said you've basically got the upstairs air handling units and everything as needed right now, and that's sufficient. We've replaced a lot of that stuff the last few years up there. But, they're gonna basically bid it or give us specs on doing just the downstairs, heating, air conditioning, the upstairs. But that unit we put in, they'll also spec a bigger unit that as those go out, you can add to and put these units in, and then put the entire,
But we're still gonna have a full up boiler in the basement.
you still have a boiler in the basement.
Are they gonna, they're talking about replacing that or just?
No, they're gonna
slapping
put some
Band-Aids on it?
controls on it to make it more efficient.
Just newer valves? that
Right.
turn- Yeah.
We went to the jail, and looked at that one. That was a real antique.
Shock.
And they're gonna, I'll know a little bit more when he gets back with me with what they suggest. The only question is whether we can afford to do that or not, but I'll see what, you know, we're paying what we are for electricity and gas and things now, so when we start, we call it the toggle session.
Right, I was saying you
Anytime,
can figure that out.
anytime in the next week or two, I think, he'll have some more concrete figures for us.
We're gonna do the toggle session in the next couple
I
weeks?
talked, initially when he contacted me in January, he said the middle of February, he ought to have some information available for me. So when I talked to him last week, he said, you know, within the next couple weeks, hopefully we'll have some information where we can start to get together and figure some things out.
Okay, and we plan on having a full, how are we gonna do that, county, like an actual meeting, a special session or somewhere, everybody can sit down and kind of put in their 2 cents on it, 'cause I think there's a lot of.
When is that?
Do you want building grounds to get together first with them and look at what they got, or do you just want?
I'm just interested, you know, with it all, so I'm not on that committee, but you can do whatever you need to do.
You know what, when he sends me the first information I get from him, I'll get with everybody and see how you wanna handle it.
That's fine.
It'd be great, more input, probably
Whatever
be
your
better, 'cause
suggestions are.
there's big decisions to be made here,
Sure.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing?
Oh, yeah, sorry, just something just while we're on buildings and grounds, apologies. I talked to Dave McCrocklin again, he's still aware of it, but just, our, downstairs non-executive washroom is in rough shape on the men's side. He mentioned, we talked a bit before, about an epoxy type on the floor. He said that will not get in the way of him, if you can find a company that does that. Just have them go in and do the floors. Once that's done, he can go in and put in the steel and paint, and that would be an easier fix than, you know, waiting on him and then doing the floor later on. So I don't know, he said there's a couple companies around that do that stuff, and they would take up the tile and sand, they have, vacuum sand blaster
Grinder.
thing that'll, you know, clear that floor out, make lay that epoxy down for us, and then.
Does he have those companies? Can you get those from him?
He didn't, I kind of asked that question, he's like, no, I don't work with anyone in particular, so it would just be a,
There's one out of Champaign I know, that I see advertised, I think he done, I think Scotty Ingram had them do part of his shop, or, I can't tell you the company's name right off the top of my head.
So, Scotty had them do some stuff for him?
Do we have any place else that needs to be done while they're here? 'Cause, I mean, that's a pretty small area, isn't it?
I would probably, I mean, I don't know what the status of the female head is, but I could probably just do that as well while they're down there.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking.
Right.
Probably a little less splashy on that side as far
Right.
as the issues we're concerned with, but, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you talking about different buildings as well?
Well, no, I just wondered, I knew if they come over for a small job, it's,
X amount to get them here.
right.
Right.
So if we had something that needed, I don't think we need to make something, but if we had
Do we need
something.
that before we, I guess, call and we've got a bid from them? I mean, we can put out to all the departments and see if they have a floor needing epoxy beyond the.
I'll call them. I'll get ahold of Scotty.
See what.
And then call them and see how, you know, what's the most efficient way for, you know, naturally, you'd like to do more, I'm sure.
Right.
But,
Okay.
you know, what's the initial, come down here to do it, cost me, and then.
Have you looked
Right.
and see?
Yeah.
And here's the deal, if you're coming down here to do somebody's barn or something, maybe you could patch on and do this
Yeah,
too.
if they've got another project in
Go
here,
through it, because we're supposed to approve it.
right?
Oh, one more thing.
If there's something you need to change, let us know.
Ori told me he's got an architect that he thinks would be really good, that they work with on occasion. I think he's out in Indianapolis. And he's gonna come down and look at what he thinks is the roof situation and the
Elevator.
elevator.
Yeah, well, that's what.
So I contacted a couple people on the elevator and they never got back with me, so. Anyway,
You didn't have anything, is Andrea doing okay though?
Yeah, you wanna know about the, farmland for sale out at the airport?
Yes, it is your turn. If you saw it in the paper, Mr. Henry called me, what was it, Friday? And asked me what land we were selling out at the airport. And of course I said, we're just trying to make up some money. No, we don't have any. Anyway, Chris called you, Chris Martin called you, and so.
He called me Saturday afternoon and apologized. I guess it's on our website of his, that there was some farmland for sale that he was selling. I guess what he did, he went up in an airplane and took a picture of the farmland that he was selling, and because of the light reflecting on his camera, he had to do it a certain way. Well, what happened was, he got some of the airport buildings in the picture. And then he started getting phone calls wanting to know if farmland was for sale or not at the airport. And then I guess that's where it all came from. But he apologized and we had a good discussion. Probably called me because I know more than most people on boards.
They should have called me, cause I was
That's it.
looking at that piece of property on an aerial photo with Dina Hassler on Friday.
So that's where it came from. He was apologized for it. That's
John,
where
do you
it
have
came from.
anything then?
I've got therapy.
Go ahead.
You can
In the
go.
same,
Take
in the
care.
same neighborhood, I had mentioned the other
Be
day
careful.
I'd go up and look at the hay barn that Matt Moss is
Yes.
renting. Can't complain about the maintenance on it, I mean, it's not much of a barn to start with.
Right.
Who owns we own the other barn, what is in it?
Just, we use it, is that,
Is it airport stuff?
is that?
There used to be airport stuff in it, I don't know whether there still is or not, and it seems to me like one of our tenants on the farm ground had some equipment in there.
There's a semi trailer, I didn't look in it,
Tucker.
I had
Is
understood,
Tucker?
He used to.
I had understood from you that we only own the one, not the other.
What,
So I got curious and I went in and asked Dina. I had another question anyway. And she's like, no, you own them both. The thing she brought up is we pay property taxes on the one that we lease. If we use it for airport storage, or if it's not part of a lease, we don't have to pay the property tax on the other one, which we are paying. So, I mean, if we're throwing, and we're not talking, she said, you know, she didn't get the exact number, probably $70 a year. But she did say, you know, if it's part of the lease agreement with the ground, we've got to pay it. If we use it for airport storage, we don't have to pay the property tax on it, which,
I think the lease, come to think of it, does include that for Tucker.
okay.
As I do believe. And I couldn't remember, because
He
No,
put some
that's
stuff
fine.
in there, and I know a few years ago, we used to have some airport stuff in
Right.
there. I don't know whether we still do or not.
Is that old plow still in there? Remember that old piece?
Probably.
Yeah, it could be, but I think Brad uses it as part of his lease.
Okay, if it's part.
And then, how much are we getting from Moss?
$100 a year.
And we're paying 70 in property tax.
Well, we pay 300 on the whole lot, which is, you know, the grass land around it, the two buildings.
Why don't we see if Moss wants it for 300, at least it's an even deal. Tell him, because I just talked to Augie about that, what, Friday or whenever, and we probably should at least be getting our property tax, and if he doesn't want to deal with that, then we'll come up with another solution, okay?
We got $200. Okay.
And he also maintains it.
Yeah. Okay,
And I will say for the record, it's not much of an old barn. I mean,
Right.
it's still standing, but
Right.
he puts round bales in it, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
I built one exactly like it, 2/3 the size, 60 foot instead of 100 foot. And I had, you know, concrete, everything, about $8,000. So you're not talking a high dollar structure either,
We'll
so,
just ask,
yeah.
ask Moss if he wants to lease it for $300, and if he doesn't,
Just whatever, I was just clarifying, I misunderstood. in the last
thank you for going
conversation,
out
so.
there and checking on it. Anything else, John?
No,
Carl?
No.
Bud?
Nope.
Derek? The other specs are out for the second project, so we should be, I think they're due in March 9th,
Sounds right for the.
March 8th, March 9th, somewhere around there, so. Anyway, onward and upward. Augie, do you have anything? Sheriff, do you have anything?
Nothing.
You'll notice that, the agenda action, let's see, we'll be, authorizing the sheriff and I to sign the contract for deputies beginning December 1st, 17 through November 30th of 2020. Augie looked at and invited me up to the Nazarene Church last week to take a look at the facility there, which we'd be moving if you approve the voting down to the Nazarene Church from the high school, and it looks very good. I'll let him go into detail on Wednesday. The only thing we have hanging fire, which we need to get on and to talk about at the next study session, is the parking agreement, which I think you sent out to everybody to determine what we're gonna do with the parking agreement with the bank. And not everything was done. Don was making a lot of changes and on the budget and assigning different funds to last year and this year, so there was no use. Plus, we're in the middle of payroll, so there was no use to get you a copy. We'll have one on Wednesday for you, okay? Anything else to come before the meeting? Thank you all for your patience, and I think some good work is being done, so appreciate that. I'd entertain and do we need to go to exec session? We do have an exec session coming up, or closed session on Wednesday, to deal with previous minutes, to decide whether to hold them over as private or whether to turn them public. Hearing none, all those, I need a motion to adjourn. Huh? Yeah, I did, okay. He said no.
So moved.
Oh, any more public comment, by the way? Just to make sure I ask. Okay, let's see, John moved, you seconded, Derek. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Jeff.
Yes.